Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about government hospitals in Maharashtra running out of essential drugs and medicines. We also talk about how soon you would be able to withdraw money from ATMs across the country without a debit card. But first, we talk about the Deoghar ropeway accident. On Sunday, at a popular tourist destination in the city of Deoghar in Jharkhand, a ropeway carrying over 50 people malfunctioned, leaving all the passengers stuck in mid-air. The complicated rescue operations ended only yesterday, and during them, 3 people were killed. In this segment, Indian Express's Abhishek Angad, who reports on Jharkhand for the paper, joins us to talk about what happened. So, Abhishek, could you start by telling us where exactly this ropeway is and how did the accident take place?
Okay, so this ropeway is located at the base of Tirkut Pahad. For the local people there, it has some religious significance. The Tirkut Pahad is basically a 10 kilometers from Deoghar town. And Sunday evening, what happened was that the rope, which is around 36 in diameter, actually slipped from its axle or the shaft and moved away from its usual area. So what happened was there were 24 cable cars which were running that point of time. That is, some people were going towards the Tirkut Pahad from the base to up, and some people were returning from there. So at a time when it got dislodged, there was some malfunction. When it got dislodged, then suddenly all 24 cable cars started hanging midair. And then alarm was raised, and people who were near to the base, around, let's say, 5-6 cable cars that were near to the base, from there, people were rescued. Then NDRF, which has already company in Deoghar, they rushed into the site. And from there, what they did was, with the help of locals, one ropeman handler, his name was Panna Lal. So they got rescued a lot of people. So at the end of Sunday evening, there were 12 cable cars which was hanging midair, and approximately 48 people spent Sunday night to Monday morning in the midair.
And Abhishek, during this operation, we understand that 3 people have died. So what were the reasons for that, and what were the complications that came in the way of the rescue operations?
So essentially what was happened was that district administration and NDRF both came to understand that the remaining 12 cable cars and the people stuck in it, they can't be rescued by the help of NDRF or the locals or the district administration. And in the night only, that is on the Sunday night only, they had sought help from the Indian Air Force, Indian Army, Indo-Tibetan Border Police, everyone, and everybody was supposed to rush to that place in the early morning. Before that, what happened was this one woman who was inside the cable car, and as soon as the cable car suddenly stopped because of the malfunctioning, it started swinging heavily on both the sides. So in that swinging, some people got injured, and there's one woman who was bleeding profusely when she was rescued, and she succumbed to her injuries Sunday evening only.
Right, because she was inside the cable car when it must have violently shook.
Yeah, she must have gotten hit while she was inside the cable car when the cable car started swinging and it shook. The next day when the Air Force came in, so they did a lot of sorties to find out where and what place they can start the rescue process, and they started it well. They had actually rescued 32 people, but in the evening, there was this 34-year-old man who, what we know from the video, because there is no official confirmation on what actually transpired, what happened there. But what we know from the video is that he was hanging from the chopper, and then he fell down, and due to the impact, he died.
Yeah, this is the video that basically went viral, and now people across the country have watched it. This visual of him falling down.
Yes. The sources in the department are telling me that actually the man panicked. So he was wearing a harness system. The Garud commandos had actually made him wear it, and then the time that he was pulled up, he was also in a very dehydrated condition and he was not in his senses, and he also panicked. And in that panic, it's purely what the sources have told me. There is no official confirmation on it, there is no official word, but what the sources have said is he panicked, and in that panic he himself plugged out the harness system, and there was some miscommunication that he must have been thinking that he will be pulled up, but then he fell down. So that was because he panicked.
Okay, so this happened on Monday, and by the end of that day, they had managed to rescue some 32 people. and about 15 people were still stuck in those cable cars. So, what happened on Tuesday?
So in the meantime, the issue was about food and water, and people were crying. So with the help of drones, with the help of service trolleys, with the help of a lot of others, they were tried to give some water to a lot of people. But still, the rescue administration or NDRF, whosoever were there in the rescue, could not reach a few people, at least 4, 5, or 1 or 2 trolleys where they couldn't reach them. So another major issue what came to them was to keep them alive in the whole night, and people also did not lose hope, and they all were rescued on Tuesday. On Monday, when that person fell, that Garud commando who was there in that particular cable car stayed back because of various reasons the sources are telling. So there was 14 civilians and 1 Garud commando who was supposed to be rescued on Tuesday. So on Tuesday, all 15 were rescued, barring one 60-year-old woman who fell. Again, we don't know what's the actual cause of the incident, what went wrong in this. There may be an official report which may come. So altogether, 2 persons died during the rescue operation and 1 died because of the impact of her head got smashed inside the cable car because it shook very heavily.
Okay, so Abhishek, to a lay person, it might seem that this is just a ropeway and perhaps it would be easy to send the Air Force to rescue these people. But what were the biggest challenges that they faced in doing so?
Yeah, so you need to understand first the entire terrain. Okay, so if you see, essentially there are 3 main towers between the base and the hill and the Tirkut Pahad. There are 3 main towers actually from where the rope hanged. Okay, so what happened was the first 2 towers is near the base and the third tower is on the Tirkut Pahad. So from the base, the second tower is very visible. So it's pretty much nearer. From the second tower, it's a steep 45-degree climb up to a Tirkut Pahad. So now what was happening was that particular cable car or trolleys were in certain degree. Now, if the Air Force initially, when they went, they had to maintain a certain degree of elevation so that there are a lot of stuff that they had to take care. One was the whirring of the blades of the helicopter. They were initially thinking if create some oscillation in the wire, so it may have an impact on how the cable car is placed at that point of time. So they had to be very careful on at what time, what was the placement of the helicopter.
Right, you can't risk the chopper actually hitting the cable car and the wires.
One is hit the cable car, also the amount of energy or force that it generates in the nearby wind, that also shouldn't shake the cable cars. The wire of the cable car oscillates so much that also create a problem. Now, second thing was the Garud commando who had to come and rescue one by one a lot of people from the cable cars. He had to maintain and take a lot of people into confidence. And there was a little logistical issue also because during the operation, people who were pulled up, they swinged a lot of time and they used to get inside the trolleys. And that was a major challenge to make a certain level of pathway so that they can go directly to the helicopter.
Right, so even while rescuing, while taking them out, sometimes people would swing and go back inside.
Yes.
Okay, so you have the terrain, which is tricky. You also have to maintain the chopper at a proper distance and at an angle, take out people at that tough angle, and ensure that everyone is calm. But Abhishek, now with these 3 deaths, what action is the administration taking?
Yeah, so the state government has announced registration of FIR into the incident. We don't know yet against whom the FIR will be registered. But as of now, people have died, so they will register an FIR. They will start the investigation. The state government has also announced a very high-level probe into this incident. Some technical committee will be formed and the probe will be done. And rupees 5 lakh will be given to the next of the kin of the deceased.
And next we talk about government hospitals in Maharashtra. The government hospitals across the state right now are facing an acute shortage of emergency and essential drugs. This even includes the JJ Hospital in Mumbai, which is the largest state-run hospital in Maharashtra. Patients who are going to such hospitals, especially those from the economically weaker sections, are now facing the brunt and are being forced to stand in long queues and buy medicines from private shops. In this segment, Rupsa Chakraborty, who reports on health for the newspaper, joins us to talk about this problem. So, Rupsa, what is the reason behind this acute shortage of essential drugs in government hospitals in the state?
So during the COVID-19 pandemic, many of the patients didn't go to government hospitals for OPD or for any kind of non-emergency treatment because they were scared of contracting COVID-19 infection. So there was 70% drop in the footfall of patients. So the demand of non-COVID medicines had also gone down. Now with the flattening of the COVID-19 pandemic curve, the government hospitals have again started receiving a huge number of patients. But the Hafkin Institute, which is the nodal drug procurement cell of the state government, they were not ready to make such huge demand in non-COVID medicines. So they didn't float the tender on time, which delayed the whole process of procurement of medicine.
Right, so this nodal agency, Hafkin, is one. But in your report, you also mentioned that government medical colleges can also procure medicines. But how much can they do that?
Yeah, so the medical colleges can also procure medicines from their end. So they are given 10 lakh rupees for procurement of medicine from their end without floating tender. But this amount is extremely not adequate for the medical colleges because of the huge demand or footfall of patients, which has now increased, like it has gone up by 60% compared to the COVID period. Thus, the medical colleges don't have adequate number of medicines at present, non-COVID medicines.
So to a large extent, this is a planning problem. The agency involved, for example, didn't anticipate that people will start coming in after the COVID wave goes down.
So there are several reasons. For example, the Hafkin Institute told that there were technical issues. So Hafkin stated that they didn't get the procurement amount, like requirement of medicine, from the DMER, which is responsible of running these medical colleges. Thus, they got delay in procurement. Whereas the vendors claim that the government didn't pay them the outstanding amount of 200 crore for supplying medicine to these government medical colleges and hospitals since 2019. Because of this, they dropped out of bidding. As a result, Hafkin Institute didn't have many bidders for the procurement and supply of medicines, which further delayed their procurement process.
And Rupsa, because of this, what kind of problems do we see patients facing?
So, as there are not enough number of medicines like basic medicines, for example, cough syrup, cetirizine, then adrenal, rabies injection, anti-rabies serum, TT injection are not available. The needy patients are being forced to buy this medicine from outside the hospital by paying from their own pocket. And most of these patients who go visit government hospitals come from poor economic background. So this is how it's burning hole in their pockets.
And in your story, you also mentioned that hospitals have now asked doctors to rationalize the use of medicine. Could you talk about that?
So now, as I say, the medical colleges are procuring the medicine from their available fund. But the procurement doesn't come in bunch, like they give the supply for 4 or 5 days. So now the resident doctors have been advised to rationalize the usage of the available medicines. So depending on the condition and severity of the patients, the doctors have to provide them the medicines that are already available with them. So this has been instructed to make the rational use of the available stock until they get the next stock.
And Rupsa, during the pandemic, there was also a shortage in the supply of crucial ingredients required to make medical drugs. Has that at all played a part in all of this?
Yeah, so Hafkin has also observed that during the COVID-19 pandemic, many of the medicines, raw materials that are required to be supplied from China or from other countries had stopped or halted because of the pandemic. They couldn't supply the material on time. As a result, the manufacturing of these medicines had got delayed, which again contributed in the delay in the procurement process of Hafkin, because again there were not many bidders because there were not many manufacturers. Like the manufacturers couldn't manufacture the required amount of medicine at the stipulated time.
And you also spoke to officials regarding this. What do they have to say in response?
So For the first time, to address this issue of shortage of medicine, the medical education department has linked the medical colleges with a portal called e-Aushadhi. So through this portal, they will be able to regulate the availability of medicine and check the real life update of this medicine. So for instance, if JJ hospital has abundance amount of particular kind of medicine, so they can give the medicine to another hospital where there is a crisis. So this will help to regulate the medicine and its availability, and also stop the delay in the procurement process. It will also help to use the near expiry medicines through the barter system. So they can exchange the medicine between the medical hospitals, like government hospitals, for the optimal use of this medicines. So the government has taken several initiatives just to stop the shortage of medicine in future, and also regulate, centralize and decentralize all the process which were earlier not possible or followed.
And next we talk about ATMs. When people visit ATMs to withdraw money, they usually carry their debit card. They insert the card into the ATM machine, enter the PIN, and get the cash they want. But soon, people will be able to do that without their cards in ATMs across the country. Right now, people can do cardless withdrawals in ATMs of a select few banks. But that happens through a rather complicated process. But all this is about to change. Indian Express's Soumyarendra Barik tells us about it. Soumyarendra, soon people will be able to take out cash from all ATMs without a card. How is that going to be made possible?
So basically, the RBI has announced that very soon you can start withdrawing cash from ATMs of all banks by using UPI, which, of course, lends to the fact that UPI has become one of the most popular payment system in the country. It commands a lion's share in India's retail payments. Something around 55 to 60% of payments in India currently, retail payments, are being done by UPI. So I think it's to lend and, to basically get something from that particular payments architecture. Another thing is that the RBI did not specify, the method by which you can do that, but we spoke to a banking source. And according to that source, what will happen is in the coming months, very soon all ATMs of all banks will start showing an option to withdraw cash using UPI, and you have to just select that option. And as a user, when you select that option, the following screen will ask you to add the amount that you wish to withdraw. And once you key that in, the ATM will generate a QR code, which is the same QR code using which, the UPI architecture, the interoperable QR code of the UPI architecture. So whatever UPI app then you're using on your phone, you basically just have to scan that particular code on the ATM screen from your mobile app. And then it's the same UPI process that we know, you scan it, the amount will already show there, and you just have to key in your UPI ID, the 6-digit code or 4-digit code, depending on what your security systems are. And once the transaction is authorized on your UPI app, the ATM will immediately dispense the cash. The RBI has not disclosed the specific way. This is something that we've gathered from a source. But one thing that Shaktikant Das, the governor, did mention was that, of course, UPI is such a common way of conducting digital payments in the country today. So, of course, apart from convenience and the ubiquity of UPI that we just see around today, he made a very important point that, these withdrawals from ATMs using UPI would also increase the security of such transactions by preventing frauds card skimming and card cloning. Unfortunately, both of these, our debit card is a little bit prone, towards these kind of frauds. So the expectation is that if you do this via UPI, it will increase the security of such transactions.
So is that the reason they have done this, the security aspect?
Yes. I mean, of course, the convenience factor, and I'm sure, the one factor which they really propped up in the press briefing later was that these would be extremely safe transactions, safer compared to a debit card withdrawal.
And the other thing is that cardless withdrawals from ATMs happen even now. You can do that from certain banks. But from what we understand, the process is a bit cumbersome. Could you just briefly explain how that works?
So some banks like, ICICI, Kotak Mahindra, HDFC and SBI, to name a few, allow their users to withdraw cash from ATMs without a card. And, this was introduced in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic because people were socially distancing and everything. So just as a measure to kind of cut your time that you spend at ATM and stuff like that. So which is why this measure was introduced. But again, it is a very, very long down process. And just to brief you very quickly on that, it involves downloading an app of the bank that you have an account with. Then you have to register yourself. Then you have to register the beneficiary, which of course can also be you or another person. Then once you've done that, you have to authenticate using your Indian mobile number. following which the app will generate an OTP. Once you key that OTP in, a 9-digit order ID will be generated. Now that order ID is crucial because then you'll have to visit the ATM. Of course, first select the cashless withdrawal option there, key in this order ID, put in the OTP, put in your mobile number, and after that, the cash will be dispensed.
So definitely not convenient for the user.
No, it's not intuitive at all. And I think that is also one of the reasons why it hasn't seen widespread adoption, because it's a very cumbersome, very long drawn, very, very tedious process. And, of course, while the process itself is tedious and cumbersome, these withdrawals are also unlike, your regular debit card withdrawals, because they come with certain restrictions. But these are restricted even further. Like some banks have different norms, others have different restrictions. But for HDFC Bank in particular, just to take an example, these cashless withdrawals are restricted to a maximum of rupees 10,000 per day or rupees 25,000 per month. I mean, we know that, using a debit card, you can withdraw way more cash than this. And also these transactions attract a service fee of rupees 25 per transaction. So, you have to pay that additionally. Now, again, because, many details about how the UPI cash withdrawals will work are yet to be chalked out. So we don't know at this point in time if these withdrawals by UPI would also, whether or not they would also be subjected to, the same restrictions and the service fee. Although the RBI has said that in the next 2 to 3 months, they'll come up with norms and all these norms would become more crystallized. So we just have to, I think, wait and see how the specific norms are laid down for these transactions.
So if in the near future, we will be able to take out cash from ATMs by just using our UPI IDs, could it then impact the use of debit cards?
So these concerns have actually been raised by multiple stakeholders because, as you rightly pointed out at the beginning of the segment, that debit cards currently are the most popular way of withdrawing cash from ATMs. And there are about more than 900 million debit cards issued in the country right now. So I mean, that a lot of people depend on these cards to go out and withdraw cash from ATMs. And many experts actually have raised concerns that allowing cash withdrawals to happen via UPI may negatively impact the users of debit cards in the country. And I think more than 300 million of those debit cards belong to users of Jan Dhan accounts. So, that is again something to consider there. And, experts believe that I think in the last 4 years, there have been multiple measures coming from the RBI specifically, which of course, promote the ubiquity of UPI. Potentially norms are made in a way which somehow, end up supporting the UPI architecture. And of course, it's with good reason as well, because how convenient it is, just the sheer massive adoption that UPI has seen, specifically, in the wake of the pandemic as well. Although Governor Das has assuaged these fears, or at least tried to, he said that he believes that debit cards may not be negatively impacted, at least the withdrawal part of them may not be, because he's specified that debit cards have multiple purposes and people don't use them just to withdraw cash. So he at least said that he doesn't see this move of allowing cashless withdrawals via UPI negatively impacting debit card users in the country.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.